If you're new here, take just one quiet second and tap that subscribe button. And if stories like this gently reach places in your heart you don't always talk about, don't forget to press like. Your support allows this channel to keep sharing stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Before we begin, I want you to do something small but important. Lean back. Let the noise of the world fade into the background. Lower the volume around you, not just the sound, but the rush, the pressure, the expectations. And promise yourself you won't skip ahead. Because this story doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It speaks quietly. And sometimes it's the softest moments that leave the deepest marks. This is the story of Elena, a woman who believed she understood love, until one ordinary afternoon reminded her of everything she had slowly, almost unknowingly, lost. Elena used to believe that marriage was sacred. Not perfect. Not dramatic. Not something pulled straight from movies or novels. Sacred in a quieter way. To her, love was never about constant excitement or loud passion. It wasn't fireworks that exploded brightly only to disappear seconds later. Love, Elena believed, lived in the spaces between words. In silences that didn't feel heavy. In jokes that no one else found funny. In hands that reached for yours without asking, simply because they belonged there. She believed love meant being chosen. Not just on the good days, but on the tired ones. On the days when confidence faded. On the days when nothing seemed particularly impressive. A home, she thought, wasn't built with furniture or paint colors. It was built with presence. And for a long time, she had that. Her husband, David, hadn't always been distant. There was a time when he was her closest friend. The kind of man who didn't just hear her words, but listened to the meaning behind them. He remembered things most people forgot. The small fears she carried from childhood. The dreams she talked about late at night when the house was quiet. The stories she repeated, and never complained about hearing again. Back then when Elena spoke, David looked at her. Not at his phone. Not at his watch. Not past her toward tomorrow's responsibilities. Just her. And that, more than flowers or gifts or promises, made all the difference. Now the house still looked perfect. The floors gleamed. The curtains were always straight. A gentle scent of vanilla candles floated through every room. Anyone standing outside would have thought nothing was wrong. But something essential was missing. The warmth had faded quietly. Not in an argument, not in betrayal, not in a dramatic moment anyone could point to. It disappeared the way light fades at dusk. So slowly you don't notice until it's already gone. David's world had grown louder and smaller at the same time. Emails. Deadlines. Late-night calls. Meetings that couldn't wait. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't unfaithful. He never raised his voice. He was simply absent. And Elena learned something painful during those years. Absence can hurt far more than anger ever could. Their conversations became functional. Did you pay the bill? What should we eat? Don't forget your meeting tomorrow. There were no slammed doors. No raised voices. No dramatic scenes. Just a silence that looked normal from the outside. And that kind of silence is the hardest to explain. Because when you try, no one believes you. At least he's not mean. At least he comes home. At least he provides. But none of that answered the quiet ache of not being seen. Most evenings, Elena sat by the kitchen window. Streetlights flickered through the trees. Cars passed by, carrying strangers with their own stories, their own destinations. She watched them, and wondered when her own life had begun to feel so distant. Sometimes she imagined what it would be like, just for a moment, to have David's attention again. To have his eyes meet hers with curiosity, with warmth, with interest. But reality remained cold. David came home tired, distracted, already halfway somewhere else. And slowly, painfully, Elena forgot what it felt like to be truly seen. That Thursday didn't arrive with drama. There was no argument. No final sentence shouted too loudly. No moment that screamed, "This is it." It arrived quietly, after a long day of errands, responsibilities, and words left unspoken. Something inside Elena finally loosened. Not anger, but exhaustion. The kind that comes from giving too much. From waiting too long. from holding everything together without being held in return. She stood in the kitchen, her hands resting on the counter. And she thought quietly, I don't need to run away. I don't need to disappear. I just need to breathe. So she did something small. Something simple. She booked a massage. A small act of care a friend once mentioned casually. The kind of thing Elena always dismissed as unnecessary. But that day felt different. That day she listened. The spa was tucked into an old townhouse on a quiet street. The sign outside was modest, almost easy to miss. Harmony Spa for body and soul. As she stepped inside, the air changed instantly. Lavender. Sandalwood. Soft music humming gently in the background. It felt like stepping out of noise and into calm. The receptionist greeted her with a smile that felt real. Not rushed. Not forced. The kind of kindness Elena hadn't realized she'd been starving for. Welcome, Mrs. Collins, she said warmly. You're booked with Marcus today. While waiting, Elena sank into a plush chair in the dim lounge. Someone flipped through a magazine nearby. The sound was soft, unintrusive. For the first time in months, Elena closed her eyes and simply breathed. She noticed the tension in her shoulders, the weight she carried every day without acknowledging it. Stress, unspoken needs, feelings she had convinced herself didn't matter anymore. When Marcus appeared, he was calm and professional, soft-spoken, grounded. Mrs. Collins, he said kindly. He led her into a room washed in warm amber light. A massage table covered in clean white linen, neatly folded towels, small glass bottles filled with oils. Take your time getting comfortable, he said. I'll step outside for a moment. When the door closed behind him, something unexpected happened. Elena felt alone. Not lonely. Alone in a way she hadn't been in years. A moment that belonged entirely to her. She lay down slowly. And for the first time, she wasn't thinking about what needed to be done. Or who needed her next. Or what she had forgotten. She was simply there. Marcus returned quietly, his movements respectful, practiced. As his hands worked carefully, professionally, something inside Elena softened. Not desire. Not attraction. Recognition. Someone was paying attention. Someone noticed tension before she explained it. Pressure before she admitted it existed. Tears welled up unexpectedly, not from pain, but release. And in that moment, Elena realized something that frightened her. She had been living without touch, without presence, without acknowledgement. Not just from David, from herself. Driving home later, the streets felt different. The world hadn't changed, but she had. A quiet question followed her all the way back. When did I stop mattering to myself? That night, David came home as usual. Tired. Distracted. He kissed her cheek without really looking at her. And for the first time, Elena noticed how empty that gesture felt. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse. She simply watched. And understood something she had been avoiding for years. Love doesn't die loudly. It fades when presence disappears. A week later, Elena spoke. Not with anger. Not with blame. With honesty. She told David she felt invisible. Not unloved, unseen. She told him she missed him, even while sitting beside him. David listened. Truly listened. And for the first time in a long time, his eyes stayed on her. Not defensive. Not distracted. Present. That night didn't fix everything. But it opened a door. And sometimes that's enough to begin again. Some stories don't end with separation. Others do. But this one isn't about leaving or staying. It's about remembering. Remembering that love requires presence. That silence can be louder than words. That neglect doesn't always look cruel. Sometimes it looks polite. And that caring for yourself is not betrayal. It's survival. If this story spoke to you, sit with it for a moment. Ask yourself the quiet questions. And if you're still here, thank you. Because listening is the first step toward being seen.